Hi there, Nigel Saunders of KW Bonsai. Today we're doing an update to our Schefflera Bonsai. Back in June 10th, so almost 2 months ago, we cut the structure of the tree back from growing it really large. And the reason we grew it really large was to get our aerial roots to drop down into the soil. And yeah, so then we cut it back on June 10th. And most of the books say you'll get new leaves in 4 to 6 weeks. Well, this tree took a little longer. It almost took, it's almost been 8 weeks. But the new leaves are coming out. Let's go have a look at them. Here's the tree by itself. We did have a few problems with when we were growing the new foliage out. We did get a little bit of dieback, and I'll show you the areas that died back on it. Here's a close-up of one of the branches that died back here. Not the whole trunk didn't die back, just this one area. And the reason it died back was due to heat. I had the tree growing in the greenhouse because I wanted to preserve all the aerial roots that hadn't reached the ground yet. So I wanted to keep it humid. I was misting it. Everything was going really well. And then we got a really hot sunny day. And the temperature in the greenhouse, I had all the vents open, but the temperature still went up to, I think it was 46 degrees Celsius. Yeah, so almost 50 degrees Celsius. It was pretty hot in the greenhouse. And the only trees that suffered were my Schefflera trees. All the ficuses didn't bat an eye. They just loved the heat. But the Scheffleras, I noticed the next day that the roots had dried up that were attached to a few of the higher parts in the tree. So we got, this branch tip, one back here, and long aerial root that I was hoping to grow, but that died back. And there was one in the back corner way back here that died back. So we only got three branch tips that, the ends of them died, and the rest are doing really well. So I think that's pretty good. Whenever you do an operation like this, you can always expect some dieback. I mean, it's pretty drastic pruning a tree back hard. So here's the other branch that died back, just this little shoot here. Here's the last couple of branches that died back, the tip here. So we had one kind of horizontal branch here and one vertical one. But there's a lot of growth. The trunk didn't die off. We just lost a bit of, our finer branching. So it's no problems. Even at this stage with the leaves just growing in, you can see some areas are more vigorous than others. We've got, some fairly large green leaves in some areas, and some other areas the leaves are just starting to come out, and on some branches we've just got little bumps with a little tiny leaf just starting. So there's some different zones of vigor in the tree. So as these branches come in, we're going to be managing that. So the branches that are growing really vigorously, they'll be the first ones that get pruned back. And we'll try and, as the growth is coming in, we'll try and get the balance equal on the tree. Pruning our more vigorous zones harder, and the zones that are weaker, we'll let them grow. The aerial roots are getting quite woody on some places, and they're developing their own radial root system on the soil surface. I'll try and zoom in and give you a close-up of that. If we look at this root in here, you can see the root comes down and then it's got some radial roots spreading out on the surface of the soil. So we'll continue to encourage this. When we go to repot this tree, the aerial roots will be pruned to get their own flat radial root base, so we get some flare at the bottom of the aerial roots. And they'll become, like a prop root, holding the branches up. One of the things I like about this planting is that it's not very large. If we get a tape measure, we can see that to the top is about 10 inches. which isn't very tall for a bonsai tree. It makes carrying this planting around really easy. It's easy to put in the car and that. If you get a bonsai that's too big, it almost becomes impractical. So I kind of prefer most of my trees to be fairly small, you know, so they fit in cars and they're easy to carry around by one person. One of the things I like to do with my trees is have a look at them and try and find things on the trees that give the size of the tree away. So, kind of clues that, you know, if you're to take a photograph of your tree, sort of like we're panning around here, what makes the tree look big and what makes the tree look small? So kind of what clues give away the actual size of the tree. On this tree, some of the things I think we can improve to make the tree look bigger is we have a lot of large roots that come from the trunks and into the ground. If we were to cut these roots back and then get further ramification on the roots, it would help make this tree look larger, having, you know, finer ramification of our roots as it goes down towards the soil line. So that's something we'll be working on in the future. Another thing is the bark on this tree is still quite immature. These trees are about probably 17 or 18 years old now. And, you know, that's old, but it's not old for a bonsai tree. And on tropical trees like ficuses and Scheffleras, you don't get the rough ridged bark that you do on like a you know, a maple tree or anything like that. The bark kind of gets whiter as they get older, and all your pruning cuts smooth out. So the trunks actually, as on a tropical tree like a ficus or Schefflera, the trunks actually lose character as they get older. This is a common problem. The trunks get, you know, more simplified as the tree gets older, which is kind of the opposite of what you want in most cases. So you have to keep developing features on your tree like aerial roots, managing them, and refining the kind of look of the tree to keep your trunks interesting. Otherwise they just get kind of smooth and boring. So yeah, you're going to always be growing aerial roots, pruning other ones off, always managing the tree as it gets older. And eventually the bark will turn a nice ghostly white color, and it'll get that look of age in a tropical tree. One thing I like to do with my bonsai trees is every now and then look at your tree and say, what's the number one thing I want to improve on my tree? It's usually trunk thickness, it could be surface roots, it could be more branching. So have a look at your tree and decide what's my number one thing I want to do with the tree, and then set about the task of doing it. So if you want to grow your trunks thicker, you have to let the top grow. You're going to let the top grow until your trunks get the right thickness. Then you've got to cut it all back and manage it again. If your number one thing is to develop surface roots, then you've got to consciously start doing that when you're repotting. If your number one goal is to develop fine ramification, then you're going to have to feed the tree well and do a lot of pinching and pruning to keep the growth compact and your foliage tight. So that's one thing I encourage you to do, is take a look at your tree, say to yourself, what's my number one thing I want to do to the tree, and then set about doing it. So with this tree, my number one thing a couple of years ago was to develop aerial roots. We've done that now. It's not done, the process, but we've got a lot of good aerial roots started. So now my number one thing that I want to do with this tree is develop my foliage in. So I want to get a nice healthy canopy on top of the tree, develop a nice fine ramification, and then next spring we're going to start working on these surface roots, improving all the ramification. So it's going to be a lot of work on roots next year when we repot this. I'm not going to repot it this year. I just want my canopy to come in, get the strength of the tree back, and that'll do for this year. That's it for today. We've given an update on our giant little tree, our Schefflera Bonsai. I just wanted to talk about the directions we're going to try and bring the tree to in the next couple of years. So, Nigel Saunders of KW Bonsai, do something green today. Try and avoid products with a lot of excess packaging. And try and go for, simple packaging like cardboard boxes and that kind of thing. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.